To be honest, coping with toxic people is never easy. I've dealt with enough toxicity in my life to know when it's best to just cut ties. But we all have toxic people in our lives who maybe just can't be avoided, whether it be a parent or a parent-in-law, a sibling spouse, a friend of a friend, or maybe a coworker or colleague whom we just cannot stand. A quote about toxic people that comes to mind every time I talk about this is from the Dalai Lama. Let go of negative people. They only show up to share complaints, problems, disastrous stories, fear, and judgment on others. If somebody is looking for a bin to throw all of their trash into, just make sure it's not your mind. It's so utterly profound. Cutting out negativity from your life, even if you can't cut out the person, does not make you a bad or uncaring person. It means you're valuing mental and emotional well-being and putting and practicing self-care first. Of course, this is much easier said than done, especially with family members. So all my patients and clients ask me, how do you deal with people you'd rather avoid at all costs? First is to set limits with toxic people. Take it from me, toxic people do not do well with boundaries. They have this tendency to want to control others as well as control situations. So trying to set limits or boundaries for them will absolutely get you nowhere. They actually see this as a personal challenge. But you can set limits on things you can control. Do not invest too much time or effort with toxic people. Keep interactions with them brief and the topics uber light. Keep in mind that toxic people will be listening for anything you say that they can spin to make themselves look better or sound better. So talk about the weather or just say nice things about someone else. Then run away as fast as you can. Set a timer on your phone if you have to, or even better, arrange for a friend to give you that old SOS emergency call. Do whatever you have to get the hell out of Dodge. Secondly, pick your battles wisely and precisely. It's tricky to balance being cordial with not wanting to normalize, let's say, someone's emotionally abusive behavior. But toxic people do not respond well to criticism. It's important to acknowledge that battles with them can quickly escalate into full-fledged declarations of war. Keep this in mind when interacting with toxic people and try this exercise. What I do is rate my grievances on a scale from 1 to 10. For example, if your mother-in-law says something about the recent weight gain of yours, that might be a 6. If she says something to you about your son or daughter's weight gain, however, well, that's probably an 11. My rule is that if it's an 8 or above, it's worth arguing about. Otherwise, it's best to just keep it moving and keep the waters calm as best you can. My third tip is to really recognize and distance yourself from their behavior. This is really key. It's not easy to rise above it when some people are just absolutely determined to drag you into the fray. But recognizing that people are indeed toxic has to be the first step towards desensitizing yourself from their words, actions, and behaviors. Ask yourself, do I value this person's opinion? And do they have my best interests at heart? If the answer to both of those questions is a resounding yes, then don't worry. What they say or do is probably harmless. But toxic people only have the power to upset you if you let them. Even if you can't distance yourself physically, you always, remember this, always have the power to distance yourself emotionally. Fourth is really to focus on the positive. I know this sounds so cliche, but I also know that if you dwell on how infuriating toxic people can be, or the problems they create or have created, it will stress you the fuck out. So my advice is do your best to catch yourself when you start to fixate on the negative, and try to consciously and be aware to switch your thoughts to solutions or more positive situations. Toxic people simply don't deserve your mental energy. Finally, utilize your support system. If you're lucky to have a support network of people who aren't toxic, rally your troops as needed. It can really feel cathartic to vent to someone who you value and who values you, if only to keep things in perspective and to assure you that you are not the problem. Your real friends and really, really good family members will remind you that you are amazing. So keep them close and listen to them. Dealing with toxic people is not easy, and these coping mechanisms really aren't developed overnight. But learning how to become more adroit at quickly assessing someone's toxicity will enable you to use these tips to tune out the toxicity that cannot be avoided. I hope you found something I said helpful and useful. As usual, use what you love and toss the rest.